Hi everybody. Today we'll discuss clinical examination of the breast, a common topic which is important both clinically and theoretically. This will be kept as a long case for you in the surgery clinics. We may get a question in the examination also. Moreover, this is a common problem we have to face in the day-to-day practice. First, identification as usual, patient's name, age, and sex. A great majority are females, but do remember breast cancer can occur in males also. Now, age. Certain diseases are common in certain age groups. For example, fibroadenoma occurs in younger age group. It may be multiple also. Fibroadenosis occurs after the childbirth in the middle age group, we can say. Fibroadenosis, where you do not find a definite lump in the breast. Inflammatory disease commonly occur in the pregnancy or lactation period. Commonest is mastitis leading to breast abscess. Carcinoma commonly occurs in elderly people, but not invariably. It may occur in the younger age also in rare cases. But common age groups, fibroadenoma, young people, adenosis after childbirth, inflammatory diseases during pregnancy and lactation period, commonly. Carcinoma in the elderly people. Residents, the breast cancer is more common in the Japan, in the Western countries, whereas the incidence is low in the Japan. Social status, more in the higher socio-economic group. When they complain of a lump, most common presentation is lump in the breast, either right side or left side, one side. You should ask for mode of onset. How did it start? What is the duration? What is the rate of growth? Broadly speaking, carcinoma rapidly grows. But some exceptions, serous carcinoma is slow to grow. And any secondary changes is occurring over the lump. Already the examination of a swelling is discussed, and you know what are the secondary changes that can occur in a swelling or a lump. This is one example is pain. A great majority of carcinomas are painless. This is the one reason why most of the patients present with late or advanced stage, because there is no pain, it doesn't interfere with normal activities. Inflammatory breast carcinoma may present with pain, fever, redness. As the name itself suggests, it mimics inflammation. Otherwise, there is no pain. Ulceration. Again, secondary changes, what may started as a lump may ulcerate. Rare, again, a rare and late presentation ulceration. And this is not the time to diagnose a breast cancer. Before ulceration occurs, before it goes into advanced stage, we are supposed to diagnose in the early stages where treatment is more effective and prognosis is good. I'll give you an example of a few cases as we proceed on. These are all cases treated by us at the King George Hospital and other hospitals. 56 years female from a higher socio-economic group. This is the most important. They are highly educated and higher socio-economic group. She presented with ulcer of the left breast 2 months. She is related to a gynecologist. And this lady, seems one of her relatives died of breast cancer. So she doesn't want to consult a physician or a surgeon, fearing that they may diagnose as a cancer breast. But the gynecologist, she came to me, she requested me to come to home to pursue her. But I said, I don't make home visits. But after much persuasion, they brought the patient to the King George Hospital on our unit OPD. Remember, she's highly educated and higher socioeconomic. This is how she presented. See, ulcer, only ulcer you can see. There's nothing like. This is a scenario in the King George Hospital, single room she is staying. This is the ulcer. See, these are all slough you can see. All this. Big ulcer. You see skin infiltration also all around. And massive axillary lymph nodes. See another view, ulcer. With arms raised. Okay. See the ulcer bleeding. I told you, this when discussing with the ulcer, clinical examination of ulcer, I told you it bleeds on touch. Even without touching it bleeding. See, specks of blood. This indicates malignancy. First you think of bleeding on touch means rule out malignancy first. This is how she presented. Now, we have discussed what is a neoadjuvant therapy. Now, we cannot operate here. Now, this is the role for a typical case for neoadjuvant therapy. You give neoadjuvant therapy, or you have a option of giving radiotherapy also. But it takes time. We'll give neoadjuvant therapy, shrink the ulcer, try to do some salvage master. So that is what we planned. And after a few days, the attendant of this patient revealed us something which leads to shock and surprise. We are shocked and at the same time surprised. What is that? These patients, see, never underestimate the patient. They have some relative in this New York Medical College. He is a radiation oncology chief. So they are sending the WhatsApp photos of everything, what we are doing to this New York Medical College Hospital radiation oncology chief, who happens to be from Andhra Pradesh. They are relative. And fortunately, he said nothing else can be done. They are doing like a textbook pattern. Now, if you recollect, there is one movie called Sixth Day. Hollywood movie, English movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger. In that movie, the villains, a group of corrupt people, they do only one mistake. The mistake is they have chosen Arnold Schwarzenegger to clone. That is the end, he kills everybody. Like that, they have chosen our unit to monitor, but we are doing everything according to textbook. They once said to me, sir, we have referred to New York Medical College Hospital. They said nothing else can be done because we just follow the textbook pattern. Maybe other units we don't know, but we'll follow just like textbook. So that's what we are surprised and shocked. Somebody is observing you. Somebody is monitoring you. Be aware. And we have taken a bone scan in that patient. See, these are all metastases. See, skull, this humerus, vertebrae, see, all the vertebrae, you name them. Thoracic, lumbar, all, cervic, everything. You see the femur also. Few days later, she had a fracture, left femur. Not surprised, we are not surprised, there is a metastasis. This is a bone scan. See ribs, sternum, here also you see the sternum. Sternum, ribs, multiple. And the skull, you see the skull. It all indicates metastasis. In the total clinical scenario, we don't take it in isolation, but you combine all the factors and come to that this is a metastasis. And to conclude, what happened is, one day this patient who had a fracture, pathologically fractured femur on the left side, just disappeared from her room early morning. It is again shocking how this woman who cannot walk, who cannot even stand, comes down 2 floors and disappear. Okay, that's what happened. Now discharge. So after ulceration, we have seen the secondary changes that can occur in a tumor or in a swelling. We have seen pain, ulceration, discharge from the nipple. And in fact, as a good clinician, what we do is we take a good history. By the time you finish off history, we're almost drawn a sketch of the diagnosis. Now, discharge will help us to zero on the diagnosis. Basically, nipple discharge can be 2 types, milky or non-milky. Milky discharge, when it will occur, lactation and galactose. We have seen few cases, woman continues to lactate in spite of the child having 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. This is called galactose. Lactation normal, this is pathological. And sometimes you may have a blood discharge from the nipple. Commonest is duct carcinoma. Think of duct papilloma, duct ectasia, Paget's disease, or rarely fibroids. These are the possibilities. And in some physiological conditions also, you will get bilateral blood discharge. Okay, coming to the non-milky, this is milky. Now non-milky, you have serous discharge in the early pregnancy, thick creamy discharge in the duct ectasia, purulent yellow color breast abscess, and various colors, brown, green, black. This can occur in fibroadenosis or duct ectasia. So the color of the discharge, either it is unilateral or bilateral, then the amount, all this gives a clue for the final diagnosis. Now retraction. Now retraction is 2 types, either a commonly nipple retraction or retraction of the breast itself. How do you assess that? When the patient bends forwards, the affected side breast doesn't fall like the normal other side. That is called retraction. But mostly we are worried about the retraction of the nipple. When somebody is presented with the retraction of the nipple, common presentation, you know the pathological significance. This is called clinico-pathological correlation. Taking a pathological symptom and transforming into the clinical aspects. Okay, anyhow, that's what we do. Maybe not everybody do it, no problem. Retraction, when somebody presents with retraction, the first question I ask them is, what is that question? You can type. You can type. Somebody presented with a retraction of the nipple. What is the first question you ask? Don't say name, age, address, Aadhaar number. No. You be focused on this. What is the question? You can type here. We'll wait. Good. Since when is she having it? Okay, duration. Good. So the retraction, when it is present, the first question is this, the duration you ask. Because the importance of short duration or recent retraction is dwarfed by the or reverse. Long duration, we are not much bothered. Recent onset, short duration, that could be malignant. Now, what is the cause for this retraction of nipple? Again, we are going to pathology. What is the cause? Anyhow, you keep thinking and type it. Retraction means you first ask is what is the duration or since how long. And recent retraction, I am more worried. Long retraction, year running into years, or since puberty, not much significance. Because my problem is to exclude uh, what is that? Maybe congenital. Okay, it is not congenital. Okay, will you just, I'll tell you. Retraction of recent or short duration, that is concern for us. Long duration, it could be either a developmental anomaly or a benign disease, not much important clinically. Now, what is the cause for retraction, pathological cause, I asked. Maybe congenital, no, this is wrong. Because basically what happens at the infancy or neonate, you don't find anything. Basically, anyhow, I will answer. During the puberty, the nipple areolar complex, NAC, that doesn't develop peripasu, that is equally with the breast tissue. So the whole breast develops at puberty, except the nipple is, it doesn't protrude outwards. In fact, the direction is outwards and forwards. It doesn't protrude outwards. So here there is an answer. Paget's disease, agreed. Paget's disease, maybe late manifestation of is a nipple retraction. Basically, it presents as an ulceration, fungation, and some disorder. Okay, but this is a okay answer. But the pathological cause I am asking for the retraction of the nipple. Anyhow, I must tell you one case. In my previous station, one Orissa lady came. She's having recurrent mastitis on one side. And she's going to some Orissa hospitals. There people prescribing antibiotics. She will get relief 1 or 2 months. Again infection. Again they do it. So after this, she came to Visakhapatnam to our institute. When we examined, we are again surprised. There is a retraction of the nipple on that side. I asked, since when? She says, since puberty. Oh my God. That is really amazing. Basically, how they miss it. Basically, self-image. One side the nipple is protruded, outward and forward. Here, nipple is inside. Okay, one. She's having 3 sisters, none of them observed this. Third, mother. I don't know why mother doesn't notice this. 3. 4, she's married, having 2 children. Husband never noticed it. And 5th, how could she breastfeed the 3 children? I do not know. Only one side she is breastfeeding. That really surprised me. So we have drained the abscess. Now we know the cause for this recurrent mastitis or breast abscess, because nipple is retracted. Secretions are collecting here. Their milk is a good media for all these microbes because highly proteinous. So naturally they will say thank you and they will multiply very rapidly. She's having a recurrent abscess. So we drained the abscess. We elevated the nipple like a normal position. We done surgery and she was happy. What is amazing here is a lady around 30 years with 3 children, not aware of the retraction of the nipple on one side. She breastfed. How this is possible? Mind blowing. How this is possible? We don't know. Nobody. Neither her husband, sisters, mother, self-image. Nobody noticed it, or nobody has done anything about that until she came to our institute. We have done that. Nipple we have elevated. She was cured of that recurrent infection. She didn't return again. Now coming back, the cause for nipple retraction, clinico-pathological correlation is Paget's is one of the cause, but what is the pathology is? It is fibrosis of the lactiferous ducts. When lactiferous ducts contracts, they pull the nipple inwards. From here they pull it. So contraction or fibrosis of the lactiferous ducts results clinically in retraction of the nipple. I told you the importance of that duration. Okay. Loss of weight. Sometimes there may be loss of weight, cough, and bony pains. An elderly lady with a breast lump complains of bony pains. Don't refer them to orthopedics or say osteoarthritis. It could be metastasis. And 70% of, at least Western literature, 70% of the women dying of breast cancer do have bony metastasis. In other words, there is a high affiliation for bony metastasis. Why breast cancer cells goes to bone and get stick there, we do not know. But there is a high 70%. This is Western statistics. So somebody complains of either shoulder joint or pain near the shoulder or hip joint or the vertebra back pain. Never think of lightly. It could be a metastasis, bony metastasis. Then you think once you take a detailed history of all these symptoms, go to the past history, any breast biopsies or BBD, benign breast disease. Now, in the benign breast disease, if there is hyperplasia with atypia, the risk of developing invasive carcinoma is 8 to 20%. Again, it depends upon the family history. So, in the past history, we'll ask for any breast biopsies, breast lumps, or benign breast disease. If she is treated for BBD, what is the biopsy report? Is it with atypia or no atypia? Atypia, this carries risk 8 to 20%. Now, personal history. Now, basically, you ask for early menopause, late menopause, all these. This is not a charting. We can't say hi. Each question is asked for a specific purpose. It will have some impact, some modification on the diagnosis or treatment or both. So not that we are charting this. We'll ask the age of menarche. She's a post-menopausal. What is the age of menopause? If the interval between these two is long, that is prolonged estrogen activity, they run more the risk. Okay. And again, we'll ask for, we have seen just BBD, the risk in atypical hyperplasia. And null parity or childless, again we'll ask. And we'll ask the age of the mother at the first childbirth. That is important. Or late first pregnancy with full term delivery. Okay. So that we'll ask. So you ask for, if she had children, you ask for age of the at first childbirth. Age of the mother, don't ask father age. Ask age of the mother, okay, at first childbirth. Because late first pregnancy or first pregnancy after 30 increases the risk. And you ask for the use of oral contraceptive pills if she is postmenopausal, hormone replacement therapy. But I find it very funny. Most of the gynecologists, they are reluctant to prescribe HRT, hormone replacement therapy, saying that you will develop other thromboembolic disorders, you will develop endometrial carcinoma, breast carcinoma, all these. They will scare you like anything. Most of them, they are reluctant. This is a fact. Okay. Most of the gynecologists, they are in the first place not willing to prescribe HRT. That is a majority, they practice like they don't give HRT. And now a question. A common food which is very favorite for these pediatrics department, which can be used as a natural supplement for estrogens, not IPM. If you go to pediatrics, they say you take this, but they don't tell the other side of the story like LIC agents. What is that? A natural food, a common food, which is supposed to have estrogen-like activity. So in postmenopausal, rather than prescribing hormone replacement therapy, they say you take these food, you take these food, you take these food items. They will ameliorate your menopausal symptoms. What is that food item? Soya, that's very good. This is good. Unfortunately, soya contains highest amount of protein, one, vegetarian, two, but unfortunately, never give it to your the future, to your husband or to your boyfriend, because this New England Journal study shows that regular consumption of soya will result in oligospermia. So fertility decreases if a man takes soya regularly. That you remember. For postmenopausal woman, this is good. For children, this is good because it contains highest amount of protein. But for a male in his active life, if you want to make him neutral or third sex, you feed him daily with soya. That's the only thing you can do. Daily soya oil is available or soya paneer is available. So many soya products are available. That we can take occasionally, not on a regular basis. Remember, this definitely long-term use, there is scientific evidence. It decreases the sperm count, decreases the fertility, make male, not female, neutral. Okay. So this soya is the other side of the soya. Nobody tells you like this. Only they say highest protein, biological value high, that and this. But this is the dark side of the soya. Occasional, okay, no problem. But not regular, never use soya oil. Oil means daily we use it. Paneer, okay, occasionally we use it. Daily we don't take soya paneer, better to take milk paneer. And now family history, you ask in the first degree relatives, mother, grandmother, and sister. And now, this is, what is familial breast cancer? What is hereditary? This you must know in the pathology. Now, I want these two things to be answered. Or both are same or different. If different, then when do you call a familial? When do you call a hereditary? Now, local examination, we'll do it in a 4 position sitting. Semi-recommend 45 degrees. Like Volvo bus, I always remember Volvo bus. I do not know whether I'm sleeping or sitting. Neither. Semi-recommend. This is a Volvo bus. Recommend, because I used to travel a long distance in the Volvo buses. Long distances. More distances you can imagine. Recommend and bending forward. Coming back to the sitting. In the sitting, what are the things we observe? Why you keep the patient in the sitting position? One is observe the level of nipples both sides. Whether they are almost at the same level or one up, one down. Retraction. Second, observe the lump. Okay. Third, axilla. These 3 things are accomplished when the patient is in sitting position. Then come to the recumbent. Now, sleeper bus. Okay, patient is fully flat. Here what happens is, the breast becomes flat. 1, it falls sideways. 2, but what we do is, the lump is pressed against the bony chest case. You can define lump more precisely in that position. But 2 disadvantages are there. So to mitigate this, we'll keep them in semi-recumbent, 45 degrees, where they do not become totally flat, they do not fall totally lateral. So we have some medium, some compromise, we'll keep them in recumbent position. And bending forward, what we'll do is, the bending forward with arms raised, see, we'll see whether the breast is falling forwards or not freely. If it is not falling, is restricted. That means it is attached to the chest wall. Okay. Then see the nipple position also, whether nipple coming or not. These are the 4 positions we will examine. Before that, you undress the patient up to the waist, both sides exposed, and you need an attendant. Chopra, they say in English also. So you need an attendant to be present there. And you explain what you are going to do it, then only do it. Especially this applies for a male doctor. Now inspection, you inspect show both the breasts, whether there is a fullness. Most of the times you will not be able to define lump clearly on inspection. Most of the times. If you are able to do it, that's okay. But most of the times we cannot do except fullness. But you see the skin changes, you see the nipple, areolar complex, any fissures, any discharge coming spontaneously. Then you see the skin, whether there is any redness or skin nodules or ulceration. You examine the arm, thorax. All these are we are inspecting. And first you are supposed to inspect the normal side, then come to the pathological side. And if you find a lump, breast lump commonest symptom, mostly it is single, unilateral, hard, no pain. In 90% of cases, you will not have any pain. And there may be nipple discharge. So these are how, when you examine, you will find a hard, unilateral, single lump with no tenderness. There is no tenderness. Now, once you complete this palpation, when you don't find the lump or you are unable to define it clearly or the lump is very vague. Commonly breast it happens. Inspection you cannot say where is the lump. So you start the palpation. When you cannot see the lump clearly or define the lump clearly on inspection, the first thing on palpation is what to do is using a flat hand, press the breast against the underlying chest wall, rolling the underlying tissue. Start with normal side first, examine any painful area last. But the first thing we do is localize the lump. Once you localize, then you can define other characters like temperature, tenderness, consistency, mobility. All these come later. First, you localize the lump because on inspection it is vague, not very clear. This is a common clinical presentation. Unless lump is very large, you may not be able to define it precisely. Again, if you are able to palpate lumps, note their position, size, shape. Here also you must define in terms of quadrants. 4 quadrants, you know how it is divided breast. Sometimes nipple areolar complex, they call it 5th quadrant. But 4 quadrants you must say upper outer, upper inner, lower outer, lower inner, like that. And position, size, shape, consistency. Consistency, soft, firm, hard, overlying skin, and mobility. And again, you examine once you examine this, fixity to pectoral muscles, we'll come to this in a moment. You examine the axilla. In the axilla, suppose you want to examine right side, hold the patient right arm with your right hand and examine axilla with your left hand. Reverse when you are examining the right hand, left hand. Now axillary lymph nodes we'll examine, we'll come to that. And once you examine the axillary lymph nodes, you must do a systemic examination, palpate the spine for tenderness. And long bone ends, we know, we have already seen, this goes into the bones. A great affinity for bones. Palpate the abdomen for hepatomegaly. Lungs also we have to auscultate. If a lump is detected, so first our priority is to localize the lump. Which quadrant it is present or which quadrants. Sometimes it extends to multiple quadrants. Situation, temperature and tenderness, number, size and shape, surface, even or uneven, margin, consistency, soft, firm, or hard. Now, you palpate with the palmar surface of the finger starting from nipple areolar complex, like a circular movements, you go like this. This is all breast tissue. We are palpating everything. Finally going into the axilla. This arrow is going into the axilla. This is how you do in a circular fashion, starting from the nipple areolar complex. With the palmar surface of your fingers, not your palm. Okay. Once you do it, you see the fixity to skin, tethering, breast tissue, fixity to breast tissue, muscles, or chest wall. Skin fixity to the skin, it may be tethering. Tethering means lump has a limited mobility. You can able to move the lump after some time. It goes here, stops, and you produce a dimpling. That is called a tethering. Okay. Once it is fixed to the skin means there is no mobility apart from the breast tissue. Either the whole lump moves along the breast tissue or doesn't move. That is skin fixation. Then coming to the muscles. We have two muscles here. What are they? Now type. What are the muscles you want to test? Because if you know the muscles, I will tell you how to contract it. Good. Pectoralis major, that's good. What is the other muscle? Minor. Okay, somebody has written pectoralis minor. Minor is basically behind the pectoralis major, and there is no separate way to contract pectoralis minor. Unless major is completely involved, minor it doesn't go. So this minor is clinically not relevant. Good. Serratus anterior. That's good. So two muscles we have to test. When we test for serratus, not all for breast lumps. When the lump is situated lower and outer quadrant, then only test for serratus anterior. Okay, lower and outer quadrant. Then we go for chest wall. Chest wall means not pectoral muscles. Remember, intercostal muscles, ribs, intercostal muscles, ribs, intercostal muscles, ribs, and serratus anterior are known as chest wall. Chest wall means in inspection itself, you can say when bending forward, it doesn't fall, it is fixed. Okay. Chest wall, be clear about the definition of chest wall. Chest wall doesn't include pectoralis major or minor. It includes intercostal muscles, ribs, and serratus anterior. These are the three components in chest wall. So minor doesn't come here, minor, but serratus anterior good, pectoralis major, that's good. This is how we test it. See, you ask the patient to press the ipsilateral hip. Okay. Test the anterior axillary fold whether the pectoralis major is contracting or not. You palpate it. Once it is palpated, in the directions, you have to test in two directions, along the muscle fibers, across the muscle fibers. When the muscle is involved, you may have some movement in the across, but not along the muscle direction. When muscle direction, there is no movement means it is fixed to the pectoralis major. And there is no difference between pectoralis major muscle and fascia. We say it is fixed to the pectoralis major and muscle. That's all. Fascia, the basic understanding is, see, this is what happens. Everybody has some wrong concept. Suppose some forearm muscles. Okay. I cannot contract separately the deep fascia or the muscles separately. Either both goes into contraction. When you contract the forearm muscles, the deep fascia become tense. Okay. That is a fundamental anatomy rule. If somebody says they can contract the deep fascia separately without affecting the muscle, or they can contract the muscle without affecting the deep fascia, then I salute them. They are from circus. I cannot do circus feats. They must be trained in circus. Anatomically, it is not simply possible. So once you do this test, you cannot say it is only attached to pectoral major, fascia, muscle is not involved, or vice versa. That is clinically not possible. So you always say pectoral major. That's what happens in the thyroid also, where the muscle and fascia you are separately testing. Separate testing is not possible. If somebody have that extraordinary ability, we salute them. We salute their foolishness, their stupidity. But definitely I salute. Now coming back, you test along the muscle fibers and across the muscle fibers. Across the muscle fiber, there may be some movement. Once the muscle is involved, there will be no movement in the direction of the pectoralis major muscle. Okay, lump is situated here, say, outer and lower quadrant. Then you go for serratus anterior. Somebody says, so push the wall. Okay, push it, I have no objection. There are other methods, but for the time being, we'll keep pushing the wall. Okay. Serratus anterior, outer and lower quadrant only. Then here you test, not for every lump in the breast. Examination of the lymph nodes, we have pectoral, brachial, central, apical, subcapsular, cervical. These two are tested from behind. Now coming back to this, 85% of the breast lymphatics goes to the axilla. That is anatomical point 1. And they are divided into lateral, anterior, posterior, central, and interpectoral and apical. 6 groups. Lateral is along the axillary vein. Okay, lateral along the axillary vein. Anterior along the lateral thoracic vessels. Posterior along the subscapular vessels. Behind the axilla, you go to the posterior. Central is in the center of the axilla. Interpectoral, few nodes in between pectoralis major and minor. Okay. Apical lymph nodes are continuous with the lateral lymph nodes. 1. They are above the pectoralis minor tendon. 2. And out they will be continuous with the supraclavicular lymph nodes, which themselves drain into the great veins, either by thoracic duct or jugular lymph duct. Now, ultimately it says, what is today in the, there is no separate watertight compartments in the body. Unfortunately, we commonly say lymphatic spread, hematogen spread. Once it is there in one compartment, if not today, tomorrow it reaches the other compartment. Now, if you see the lymphatics, okay, these lymph nodes are involved. From apical, it goes to supraclavicular. Supraclavicular, it goes to the great veins either through thoracic duct or the jugular chain. That means what is today in the lymphatics, maybe because of slow motion, tomorrow it will reach the venous system and it become hematogenous spread. There is no hard and fast rule or a watertight compartment. It's only lymphatics. You cannot say there is no hematogenous spread or it is only hematogenous, it is not lymphatic. That is not there. But our convenience, our understanding, we separate them, we compartmentalize them. Okay, these are the lymph nodes, and we have already discussed sentinel lymph node. What is sentinel lymph node? What is its uses? All this we have already discussed. Now, general examination, you examine the abdomen, you examine the skull, cranium, entire vertebra, paraspinal tenderness, look for. Examine the ends of the long bones also, because metastasis can go there. And you have to put provisional diagnosis. And this is the one clinical situation where the student is, you cannot simply say breast carcinoma right or left. That is incomplete. You have to stage the tumor clinically. This is what you are supposed to do in the examination. And clinical staging, TNM and group staging, you are supposed to do it. Simply writing breast carcinoma right side, it doesn't make any sense. The next question we ask is, what is your staging? If you don't answer, means you have not done completely. Now, this is the triple assessment: clinical assessment, radiological assessment, ultrasound, MRI, or tissue diagnosis, or FNAC. Biopsy may be true cut needle biopsy, or core needle biopsy, or we have an incisional biopsy. But anyhow, this is histopathological, this is cytological. So the positive value is more than 99%. With these three things, you can definitely make a diagnosis: clinical assessment, radiological, and a tissue biopsy. This already you know that. Now, you must know, because you have to keep a TNM staging clinically. This is a TNM staging. TX means tumor cannot be assessed, either removed or disappeared after chemo radiotherapy. Anyhow, there is no tumor. T0, no evidence of tumor clinically. TIS is in situ carcinoma. This also we cannot make clinically. So T1 means tumor diameter is 2 centimeters or less. T2 more than 2 centimeters but less than 5 centimeters. T3 5 centimeters. When the tumor is more than 5 centimeters, it is T3. T4 you have A, B, C, D. A means extension to chest wall. This is again for repetition. Chest wall includes ribs, intercostal muscles, serratus anterior, but not pectoralis major. That you remember. Now extension to chest wall is T4A. T4B, either PD orange, ulceration of the skin, satellite skin nodule, same side. This goes into T4B. T4C, both T4A and B. And T4D is inflammatory cause. So basing on this, you can keep the T4 staging clinically. This can be done clinically. There is no problem. Lymph nodes, NX, no lymph, cannot be evaluated. N0, no regional lymph nodes, clinically. N1, ipsilateral regional lymph nodes, axillary only. We are thinking regional means axilla. I have told you 85% lymphatic drainage goes to axilla. N2A, lymph nodes fixed to each other or other structures. N2B, involvement of mammary lymph nodes, internal mammary lymph nodes. N3A, infraclavicular. N3B, both ipsilateral, axillary and internal group. N3C, involvement of supraclavicular. We have seen it is continuation of apical group, supraclavicular group, from there into the great veins via thoracic duct or jugular channel. That's how it goes on. And there is a MX, no distant metastasis. M0, no metastasis. M1, metastasis. Even ipsilateral supraclavicular lymph nodes are considered as M1. Now we have seen this, bones are the, or skeletal system is a very favorite site for metastasis. Now something called here vertebra. Vertebra comes, one of the most favorite site for metastasis, vertebra. Lumbar vertebra, femur, and thoracic vertebra. Commonly it goes in that order, commonly. Sometimes it may skip. Now, the question is, how does, from a breast situated here, it goes retrograde to the lumbar vertebra? Now I want an answer. We say lumbar vertebra commonly involved. And how does the breast cancer here goes to the femur, the metastasis? Thoracic vertebra, okay, you can say they are neighbors or it's living in the same apartment, no problem. But here, how you say? Direct invasion through open space. What open space? Okay, here primary, here lumbar vertebra. Where is the open space between these two? Hematogenous, okay, good, but I want, that's right. But I want more specific. Okay. See, hematogenesis is like this. If somebody asks me where I'm staying, I say India. It is not right. It is not wrong. Yes, I am living in India. You are also living in India. I want specific answer. The hematogenesis is correct. Mera Bharat Mahan Hai. I'm living in India. You are also living in India. We cannot say my address is India. Via intercostal vessels, lymphatic. Okay. Anyhow, okay, it's all right. You are doing good effort. Good. I want this because you must keep thinking. Okay, this open space not correct. Hematogene is correct, but it is rather vague. Via intercostal vessels also part of hematogenous. Okay. Lymphatics we are lymphatics what we are discussing so far from gain repeat apical to supraclavicular to great veins via thoracic duct or jugular chain. It is going upwards now. It is coming down backwards, retrograde. Okay, don't worry, but you are making a good effort. Good. Now there is something called, I don't know whether the anatomy people tell you or not. There is something called Batson's venous plexus. What is this Batson's venous plexus? It parallels, joins, bypasses other three systems. Other three systems, you know. What is the other three systems? Portal, caval. What is the other system? Pulmonary. So these three systems are joined, parallel, and bypassed by this vertebra. Batson's vertebral venous plexus. It is present along all the vertebra. Okay, from both sides along the vertebra, it is present. And here, the pressure that directs the flow of the blood. Somebody coughs, some few cells are driven into this Batson venous plexus. It goes and somehow stays in the lumbar. And it is very effective by the fact that in majority of patients, lumbar vertebra are involved. How it is reaching that? Because of your answer must be Batson venous plexus. Again to repeat, what is Batson venous plexus? It is a long plexus present along the lateral borders of the vertebra on both sides and which parallels, joins and bypasses the other three systems. Then what are the other three systems? We have portal, caval and pulmonary. Okay. Through these Batson venous plexus, it reaches the vertebra and other bony areas. Like it can reach anywhere, you know. But commonly, femur vertebra, lumbar vertebra, femur, thoracic, like that it goes. And we have seen that in that bone scan, sternum, ribs, everywhere, anywhere in the advanced cases, it can reach. You cannot do anything about it. You can't stop it. Sometimes they put a filter and all, but that is all very advanced modes of treatment. So that's what happens. This reaches by this Batson venous plexus. Okay. Next, this is group staging. So this is how you have to by heart remember this. Stage 2B means what is this? T2, N1, M0 or T3. We have seen more than 5 centimeters. No lymph nodes, no M0. That becomes stage 3. And stage 3A. Here the T0 to 2, but here is N2 lymph nodes. Okay, this is how it goes into this. Then stage 4 means any T, any lymph node, M1. M1 means we have seen supraclavicular lymph nodes are also M1. That we call it stage 4. This is a TNM group staging. This can be done easily. Now, any questions? You can type. If case is available, definitely it will be kept in the clinical examination as a long case. You have 40 minutes to write the case sheet. 50 marks you will be evaluated. And you have to take a good history, clinical examination, diagnosis. Investigation, just write. Just names of the investigation. Don't describe the procedure. Just names. Suppose say any blood test you want to do, you say blood test, what you want to do, chest X-ray, ultrasound of the abdomen. All these things like that you write. And finally, treatment, one line. No, what is this UTI, urinary tract infection? Now you be clear here. What is UTI? You mean urinary tract infection? You retype again. What is UTI? Urinary tract infection. What is that? Ah, no, it doesn't spread. Urinary tract infection doesn't spread. That doesn't spread through the Batson plexus. Batson venous plexus is, I told you how it connects, bypasses joints of the three systems, and abdominal pressure, like a cough. When you cough, there is increased pressure in the venous system that pumps few cells. That's how the metastasis from breast cancer reaches the lumbar vertebra, femur, and sometimes thoracic. It goes on any bone, actually any bone. You cannot say no bone, any bone can be affected. So UTI, for all practice, it doesn't spread by Batson venous plexus. Okay, when coming, this one is present, case is present at the time of your examination, definitely this will be kept. 40 minutes time you have to write full case sheet. 50 marks will be long case for university, entire UHS guidelines, 50 marks. And you have to put only for this, remember, only for breast cancer or a breast lump, if it proves to be carcinoma, you are supposed to stage the tumor. For other, suppose carcinoma stomach or carcinoma thyroid, please don't do overaction by putting TNM staging. If you put TNM staging for thyroid or stomach, will tear you apart. Definitely. I will award you 0. I will ask you 100 questions. You cannot answer even one question, I will put you 0. That's all. So only for breast cancer, clinically, you are supposed to put the TNM staging, not for other tumors in practical examination or clinical examination. If a question is given for some thyroid cancer in theory, you may write, you may not write it. That is a different issue. But in the examination, in the clinics, in the practicals, don't do that. Okay. Only for breast. That's why I have given you the TNM staging also, which you can go through. Not very difficult to remember. If you go through 2 or 3 times, you can remember. And you can apply also that. No problem. That clinically, you can apply on the bedside. There is no problem. Any other questions? I tell you one example, okay? Because since 2003, I was going as an examiner for a number of universities. Once I went to, in a combined state, went to Warangal. As entire UHS sectional examiner, Warangal, that Telangana region. That time we are in a combined state. And one person presented a thyroid case. He has written, really believe me, 25 pages case sheet. But only few lines, 4 or 5 lines per page. I was shocked. I asked him, from where did you get this case sheet? He said, he is a computer savvy. He said, got it from net to Google. I simply asked, don't you listen to what your teachers tell you daily? You don't listen. You read Google and you think you can go through the exam. So that fellow, naturally we are upset. We don't give result. 25 pages, I don't give him distinction. Rather, I will give him 0. Because that case sheet, that is not acceptable for us. I cannot give a local case sheet. That must be acceptable international or any other conference or any other college. They must accept that. Not local practices, international practice, how they are proceeding, how they are going to 0 on the diagnosis. That is important. I cannot tell I am referring some nameless, addressless book that you read for your own risk. We don't encourage that. Everything what I told is from a standard international textbook. Only we'll tell. We don't go for nameless, addressless books. No, we don't tell. Whether you listen to us, follow us or not, unfollow, that is your problem, not our problem. But our answers, our are standard, 100%. If there are no questions, enjoy this. Okay? We'll meet again. Okay?